Locked On Dynasty Football, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Here are your hosts, Matt Williamson and Ryan McDowell.
Hey, everybody. Welcome into the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast. I am Kate Madgziuk. You could follow me on Twitter at FFBallBlast. And as always, I'm joined by Marcus Mosher. You could follow the Marcus Mosher, the hostess with the mostest. Everybody give the show a follow at Locked On Dynasty. Hit that subscribe button. Be sure to give us a follow on YouTube so you never miss any show ever. We want to help you build the ultimate dynasty roster, and the time is coming. We are like, I feel like the dynasty season is never truly in full swing until the NFL season is over.
Yep.
And we have all of the information we possibly could need to construct our rosters. But Marcus, we've got enough information. We're going to keep trucking on with our team reviews. We've got the Arizona Cardinals and the Dallas Cowboys today.
Mm-hmm.
Two teams that have a lot of fantasy relevant assets.
They do, and I'm excited to talk about them today. We've got some disappointing teams that got knocked out in the first round of the playoffs, Kate. But before we start, should we tell our listeners about Get Upside?
Let's do it. This episode of the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast was brought to you by Get Upside. Just download the free Get Upside app. Use promo code Touchdown to get 25 cents per gallon or more. Or darn it.
That's right. You're good. It's all you need to do. Go to Get Upside. Use promo code Touchdown. 25 cents or more on your first gallon of gas. That's it. That's all you need to do. Kate, let's talk about the Cardinals, because this is a team that was the number one seed in the NFC for most of the season, completely fell off in the last, 5-6 weeks of the season. Kind of a disappointing end. But my question for you is, from the 2021 season, who was the most valuable dynasty asset on this team?
It's James Conner, and it's not
weird,
even close. And I'm devastated, honestly, as a Steelers fan, because I was really sad to see James Conner walk away. He was sent to the Arizona Cardinals on a 1-year deal. I think it was right around $1 million.
Yeah.
And this guy was
literally
the absolute staple for this team. I'm just not so across the board, best fantasy value in redraft leagues, dynasty leagues. I don't know that there was a better value really anywhere for the amount of production that he ended up putting up. We knew he was good at scoring touchdowns. Maybe didn't know he was this good. 18 total touchdowns from scrimmage. Absolutely phenomenal. But he's probably, despite this value, one of the most confusing assets to value moving forward, because he's out of Arizona, could be brought back, obviously, but he is a free agent at this point. He's older. We've seen a little bit of those health struggles come back into play when he got a significant workload. What in the world do we do with James Conner?
Yeah, so James Conner finished as the RB5 this year. That's despite missing 3 games. Like, he wasn't somebody who was just getting a bunch of volume and kind of was like the last guy left. No, like, he had some monster games, Kate. I'm looking at his game log now in PPR leagues. He had a 20-point game, a 40-point game, a 21-point game, 33, 27, 19. Like, he was a guy that legitimately could win you weeks. But what do you do about him going forward? He's a free agent. He's older. We have no idea what the Cardinals are going to do at running back. They still like Chase Edmonds. They like Eno Benjamin, who they have. I have absolutely no idea how to value James Conner going forward.
Yeah, there's even looking through some of the recent trades on Dynasty League football, there aren't a lot of really great examples of trades and how to value it. The value really just seems kind of all over the map. I don't think anybody knows what to do with James Conner, but I think you did see maybe a blueprint, even if he doesn't stay with the Cardinals. Maybe they set the blueprint for James Conner, because we know, we know he's good at scoring touchdowns. He was good at scoring touchdowns in Pittsburgh. I do think that could be maybe them setting the blueprint for him to get this kind of workload moving forward. I think he's probably a value just in general moving forward because he's a guy that we're always just very, very tentative about
Yep.
believing in his accolades.
All right, so let's look at where he is like in terms of value right now, and whether you'd be okay trading for him. I'm looking at a trade right now where it's James Conner for Rashad Penny.
I'd prefer Rashad Penny there.
Yeah, I would as well. James Conner or a 2022 second round pick.
I'll take James Conner.
Okay. James Conner and Amon-Ra St. Brown for Travis Kelce.
I'll take Travis Kelce.
Okay. James Conner. Are you ready for this one? James Conner or Sony Michel.
Wow. That one's interesting.
The running backs going into free agency. Michel significantly younger, I believe. It's got that first round draft pedigree. I think Conner.
I think I roll with Conner there, actually.
Yeah.
I mean, we saw Sony Michel have his moments this season, but once again, when put up with a sustained and prolonged workload, he didn't continue to look quite as good. So
I agree. That's
Conner,
a tough one. That's one I kind of struggle with a little bit. But I want to keep talking about this Cardinals team because I find them fascinating because there's so many guys here that I think are interesting, valuable dynasty assets. But before we talk more about them, I want to tell you guys about Get Upside. Our listeners are earning cash back for every single gallon of gas every time they fill up. Just download the free Get Upside app in the App Store or Google Play right now and use promo code Touchdown for 25 cents per gallon or more on your first fill up. Cash back. Don't pay full price at the pump anymore. Get cash back using Get Upside. Just download the app for free and use promo code Touchdown for 25 cents per gallon or more on your first tank. Some people who drive a lot are earning like $200, $300 a year just by using Get Upside. You can cash out anytime to your bank account, PayPal, or e-gift card. Just download the free Get Upside app and use promo code Touchdown to get 25 cents per gallon or more on your first tank. Again, promo code Touchdown. We also want to tell you guys about BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before, as football is at the end of the year with the Super Bowl coming up next week. They're going to have a ton of props, though, for you, so make sure you guys check that out. BetOnline.net remains the best spot for all of your sports scores, podcasts, and news this season. And it's not just football. BetOnline has up-to-the-minute info on pro and college hoops, NHL, boxing, UFC, along with live real-time updates for current games. Don't wait to take advantage of all the new amazing offers available for the 2022 season. BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, Kate, next question. Most disappointing player for the Arizona Cardinals this year?
DeAndre Hopkins. Come on down.
Yeah.
Such a disappointing season, and it's actually kind of crazy because he wasn't disappointing really for fantasy. But I think all of the usage, all of the ways that he was scoring points, which it was essentially touchdowns just across the board, finished the year with 8 touchdowns in just 10 games. That is where his fantasy production came from. Did not crack the 100 receiving yard mark in the 2020 season. Obviously was not fully healthy, but he needed a pretty significant target volume to even accomplish this. And he didn't exceed 87 receiving yards on the season. He was not the DeAndre Hopkins that we all know and love. And I'm concerned about the percentage of fantasy points that are made up of touchdowns, because we know those are just statistically pretty variable.
Yeah, that's a good one. It's the problem with Hopkins, he just was really never healthy at all. Like, even when he played, he wasn't healthy. So I cut him a little bit of slack. For me, it's AJ Green. Like, AJ Green played 16 games this season. He was healthy, and he scored 3 touchdowns. He had only 54 receptions. Like, yeah, there were games where he looked good, would make a play down the field, but AJ Green just seems kind of washed to me, right? And they had him on a 1-year deal. What?
The issue for me comes with expectations.
I know,
what
but
were
listen,
your expectations. That is what gauges disappointment. Because you know what? I was pretty disappointed with Marshawn Lynch in his production this year. Like you can't set these expectations.
Listen,
It has to be based off of the level
okay,
of disappointment based on your expectations. If you came
fair.
into the season with a lot of expectations for AJ Green, I'm going to guess you haven't been paying very close attention since 2016.
Here's the thing. If I would have told you that AJ Green was going to play was going to play 16 games this year and was going to run the most routes of any Arizona Cardinal receiver, you'd be like, great, that's awesome. Even Green at, age 33 is going to get to 1,000 yards and 6 touchdowns. No, he didn't. He had 54 receptions this year. He had 92 targets. Like, I don't know. It was just.
I don't think I would have, even with the perfect storm. I don't know that I would have believed in AJ Green.
That's fine. It's a good point.
But I mean, DeAndre Hopkins, you have to admit, this was a guy that, like, even if you're giving him that grant of, the injury, he is 29 years old. Obviously, he's a critical part of this team, but he's at that age where we start to value him a little bit different in Dynasty. So where do you have him ranked moving forward? Because I think that's the bigger question, especially if you're somebody who believes that a product of some of his disappointing games or those disappointing games were a product of health.
I will say this. Hold on, Kate. Going back to Hopkins, right? In games where he started and finished, every single one, he was over 10 PPR points. Now, I know that's not a huge bar to clear, but he had 3 games of 20 or more PPR points this year. Like, he's still a really good receiver when he's healthy. So
he averaged 12.6 PPR points per game over a 10-game span, and he scored 8 touchdowns, Marcus. That is a good amount of touchdowns for a wide receiver to play an entire season. But when you put things on a I'm alarmed. I know we have to consider his health, but he is going to be 30 years old coming into next season. We know that's not like the ultimate wash, but I think we need to be cautious about Hopkins moving forward.
All right. So currently in Dynasty League football, he is ranked as wide receiver 22, and that feels a little bit low to me. Let's read some guys that are ahead of him. Calvin Ridley, wide receiver 20. I would rather have DeAndre Hopkins going forward.
I would rather have Calvin Ridley in any way, shape, or form.
The age isn't all that different. There's only 2 years difference between them. So I'd rather have Hopkins. Jerry Jeudy.
Ooh, I'll still take Hopkins.
Okay. Michael Pittman at 19.
Ooh, that's a good one. It's a good trade when I'm stumped.
It is, yeah.
That's the good mark of a trade.
Here's a really interesting one. Mike Evans. Evans is only like 6 months younger. Quarterback situation is, who knows, right?
Oh my God, Marcus, I'm genuinely completely stumped. I do not really, like, all of these guys are so close. I think that I probably would give the edge to DeAndre Hopkins in all of these metrics, except maybe Mike Evans, who I just think so safe. And it really hasn't mattered which quarterback has been under center for him. He is the focal point of the team. You have Chris Godwin, who's leaving in free agency, probably, maybe leaving. Either way, torn ACL. So I think that Mike Evans just has his position so solidified here. And then let's talk about Gronk leaving. Again, all of these are presumptive, but Gronk has always said he's not going to play with a quarterback other than Tom Brady. I have to imagine he's out. There's so much opportunity.
There is. I will say this. His efficiency has dropped, though, in 4 straight years. In 2018, 11 yards per target. 2019, 9.8 yards per target. 2020, 9.2. 2021, 9.1. Even in the last 2 years playing with Tom Brady and playing 32 games, he's only at 2,000 yards. It's the touchdowns that have saved him quite a bit. I just wonder if it's Kyle Trask or Blaine Gabbert that's the quarterback there, or even Jimmy Garoppolo, he's just not going to outscore DeAndre Hopkins next year.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Last one on the Cardinals. Anybody you're trading for this offseason from this team?
I'm not really looking to make any moves for any of these Cardinals because you know what? The issue with the Cardinals is, there are question marks. So consider the run game. Lots of question marks there. I'm not comfortable buying any of these guys. I did say I'd like to trade for James Conner. I do think his value just seems a little low in general. But I think there are so many question marks in general with this offense. And, like Rondale Moore was, supposed to be the bread and butter. And we were supposed to see him come to fruition. There's just so many different moving parts that have disappointed me on the whole this season that I don't think any of these guys have had their prices drop low enough for how disappointing they were in retrospect. None of these feel like a buy on their current value.
The only one for me that's a little interesting is Christian Kirk, just because he's only 25. He's hitting free agency. He's coming off the best year of his career. Does he get a decent sized deal in free agency and with the team and become, a high end number 2 receiver? Maybe. Or maybe the Cardinals bring him back and let AJ Green go. And he's now getting consistently 120 targets a season. I just think he's a good player, and I think you can get him pretty cheaply. I'm looking at some trades right now in Dynasty League football, like Christian Kirk for Marquez Callaway. Christian Kirk for Antonio Brown is kind of hilarious. Christian Kirk for Robert Woods. Christian Kirk for a second-round pick. He's somebody I'm at least interested in.
I would take Christian Kirk in all those trades, actually. Yeah. Good call.
All right, one more quick break to tell you guys about Built Bar. It's the new year, so that means New Year's resolutions. If yours is about getting fit or eating healthier, make sure you include Built Bar in your plan. Built Bar is the protein bar that tastes just like a candy bar, or maybe even better than a candy bar. Built Bars are 100% covered in real chocolate, and most Built Bars only contain 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, 4 net carbs, and 17 grams of protein. They're always coming up with new flavors, including coconut almond, peanut butter brownie, raspberry, cookies and cream, salted caramel, mint brownie, and so many more. Go to Built.com and use promo code LOCK15 and get 15% off your next order. Use promo code LOCK15 for 15% off at Built.com. All right, let's talk about my Dallas Cowboys. I know we have to, but most valuable dynasty asset from this team in 2021 was?
Got to be Dak Prescott by default. But based on value, I'd like to shout out Tony Pollard, who I think has provided the most oomph and potential dynasty boost this season. Even though Ezekiel Elliott was the RB6, I still think for the price you pay for Tony Pollard, his upside is quite high for me. But again, like just on default, it's kind of like how we award the MVP to the quarterback every year. Dak Prescott he's played some very high quality football. And once again, he just is a pretty safe asset. He's secured in this offense. He's got all the weapons in the world. I'm curious as to your thoughts, Marcus.
Yeah, that's a good one. That's not actually who I had, though. I had somebody different. Okay, this player I'm going to mention is now finished as a top 10 player at his position in back-to-back years. This player finished as the number 3 player at their position in 2021, and a pretty reliable player. Do you know who I'm talking about?
I don't.
Dalton Schultz.
Wow.
Yeah, Dalton Schultz was tight end 3 this year behind Mark Andrews and Travis Kelce. You probably got him for nothing. He's probably sitting on your waiver wire last year. Dalton Schultz, just a good tight end, about to hit free agency now. Never had any monster games. He had a couple games in the 20s, but fairly reliable tight end. And at a position that's hard to find reliable, they'll take it.
Yeah, definitely like that one. And I think that the interesting thing too is that I still don't think anybody's really bought into Dalton Schultz. Like, despite the production, I don't really see him as a guy that people are overly high on, and they're not a believer in the actual production and that it's sustainable. But definitely intriguing. Like if we were to see Dalton Schultz go to, let's say the Chargers, for
Yeah,
instance,
exactly.
that would probably solidify him as a top 5 dynasty tight end for
Yep.
me.
I agree with you. From what I've kind of been hearing and some of the whispers, it sounds like he's going to get a lot of attention in free agencies. So it's a good thing. I think Schultz is going to be a valuable tight end going forward for the next couple of years. Most disappointing dynasty asset.
All right. Don't hate me, Marcus. I mean, we've kind of agreed on this in the past, but I think it's CeeDee
It
Lamb.
is. You're right. Yep.
For a top 5 dynasty wide receiver, obviously the bar is extremely high. But the issue for me, it comes on a bunch of different angles here. You were on a very talented Dallas offense that had just so much upside and so much scoring potential. And I don't feel like he was a crucial part of that. Just he felt like kind of an afterthought. Like I would argue that Dalton Schultz felt like a more critical part of that offense moving when they needed to move the chains. He felt like more of the guy than CeeDee Lamb did, and it just it kind of it was a big flop for me. So I don't know how we can possibly value him as a top 5 tight end or top 5 wide receiver moving forward when he doesn't feel like he's even solidified himself as the top receiver. We still have Amari Cooper there. With Michael Gallup having torn his ACL, I have to imagine they're going to keep Cooper in the mix, and he feels like the guy that is more reliable.
Yeah, I agree. We've been talking about this all year. Like, I didn't understand why somebody like Cooper Kupp was ranked behind CeeDee Lamb. CeeDee Lamb had 7 games this year of 14 or more fantasy points in PPR leagues. And you look at that, like, compared to Cooper Kupp, Kate, who can you guess how many times Cooper Kupp had fewer than 20 PPR points this season?
I'm going to guess like 2.
3. And those 3 games were 11.4, 16.2, and 18.6. That's it.
That's pretty wild. And
that's what I don't understand about Lamb. I love CeeDee Lamb. I think he's a fantastic talent. He's just not on a team that's going to consistently throw him the ball. They're not going to make him a priority every week to get 10 to 12 targets. That's not necessarily his fault. But when we're looking at it from a dynasty perspective, that's not a guy that should be ranked inside the top 5 for receivers, right?
No, just had 4 wide receiver 1 performances this year.
Yeah.
4 finished as a wide receiver 3 or worse in over half of his games played this year. Like, this was a guy that didn't necessarily help you out a ton from week to week, but he hurt you a lot more than that. So he's definitely moving down my ranks. And if I can move him for top 5 value in dynasty leagues right now, I'm doing it.
All right. Last one. Any buys or sells in this team?
You kind of sold me on Dalton Schultz, but I'm gonna let you keep that credit for that one. I'm going back to Tony Pollard. The weird thing is when you're looking at the performance of Ezekiel Elliott, though he's not efficient, he looked good to start the season. Then as he was banged up, really started to just decline overall. But Ezekiel Elliott was still the RB6, which is kind of crazy. But you have to acknowledge that that's based on touch volume alone. I just think that Tony Pollard is a guy that doesn't necessarily need all of that volume to be a really solid weekly flex play. I love the usage that we saw from him as a receiver this year, despite all of their weapons. Now imagine Dalton Schultz is out of the mix. That frees up a few more targets, but Tony Pollard is young. His price is relatively low for, I think, the upside that he poses overall.
Yeah, see, I'm actually going the other way. I would rather trade for Ezekiel Elliott. And listen, my thoughts on Zeke, but it's more because
I'm
Cowboys are paying. Ezekiel Elliott a bunch of money, and he's going to be on this team at least this year and probably next year. And this is a team that likes to see the money on the field, right? Like Zeke is going to get touches and he's going to play a lot. And it might not be pretty, it might not be efficient, but he's probably going to finish as a top 10 running back again next year, Kate. And you can get him for cheap. Like I'm looking at trades right now. Ezekiel Elliott for Cortland Sutton straight up.
Yeah, I think that's especially after Cortland Sutton's season, man, that's very intriguing.
Ezekiel Elliott for James Robinson in the 2nd round pick.
Yeah, give me Zeke there.
Ezekiel
You're right.
Elliott
It's not always going to be pretty points, but he is probably going to finish top 10 in a position that is crucial.
What you do is you trade for Zeke and you make one of these trades. Example, Ezekiel Elliott for Elijah Moore in a 2022 2nd round pick. It feels really gross. It feels like you're getting a player on the downside of their career because you are. There's absolutely no doubt about it. But you put him in as your RB2. And every week he's probably going to get you 10 to 13 points. And it's pretty consistent because he's getting a lot of touches and he's getting receptions in the backfield. But I think that's a nice move if you want a really good RB2 going forward.
I like that. That is that is
strategy. I feel gross saying that. I just want to say that. I feel gross saying that.
No, you know what? I actually like it. We always say it's like the stock market. This is what dynasty football is most comparable to, and you buy folks on their dips, and Ezekiel Elliott is a guy that's certainly dipping, but is also probably going to
return value there.
Return some value. Yeah,
I agree. All right, that is it for today's show. Thank you guys for tuning in. As always, you can download the show wherever you get your podcasts: Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts. Follow the show on Twitter at Locked On Dynasty. You can follow Kate at FFBallBlast, and I'm at Marcus_Mosher. Enjoy the Pro Bowl this week, maybe. I don't know. We'll see you guys Monday.